The morning sun rose over the hills of New Appalachia, casting long shadows across the colony's main street. Doug Miller walked with heavy steps toward the research center, a cup of coffee clutched in his weathered hand. At 53, Doug had spent most of his adult life studying strange creatures on distant worlds, but nothing had ever captured his interest like the dragons of this moon. "Morning, Dr. Miller," called Frank Thompson from the supply depot. "Any luck finding those missing dragons?" Doug shook his head. "Not yet, Frank. It's been 3 weeks now." The research center sat at the edge of the colony, a simple building with large windows that looked out over the purple fields beyond the settlement. Inside, the main lab was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. The empty incubation chamber stood in the center of the room, its door hanging open, like a silent accusation. "I checked the tracking data again," said Jessica Winters as she entered the lab. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, dark circles under her eyes showing she'd been up late working. "Nothing. It's like they all turned off at once." Doug set his coffee down and ran his hand over the smooth surface of the incubation chamber. 12 baby dragons don't just vanish, Jess. They have to be somewhere. The dragons had been the greatest discovery since humans arrived on this moon 30 years ago. Small flying reptiles with shimmering scales and the unusual ability to expel superheated gas from special glands in their throats. The colonists had named them dragons for obvious reasons, though they weren't much bigger than house cats when fully grown. "Governor Taylor called again this morning," Jessica said, pulling up data on her tablet. "She's worried about the ecosystem balance. Without the dragons keeping the field mice population down, farmers are reporting more crop damage." Doug nodded. The relationship between the dragons and the colony had grown beyond scientific interest. The creatures had become an essential part of life here, keeping the fields clear of pests in exchange for safe places to nest and regular feeding stations. "Let's go over what we know," Doug said, moving to the large screen on the wall. 3 weeks ago, all 12 juvenile dragons were here in the incubation chamber. They were healthy, active, feeding normally. Jessica tapped her tablet, bringing up video footage. Last confirmed sighting was at 9:15 p.m. Night shift reported all 12 present during the evening check. And by morning, they were gone. No signs of struggle, no damage to the chamber, no unusual readings from any of our sensors. "Could they have escaped?" asked Mike Reynolds, a junior researcher who had just entered the lab. Tall and lanky, with a mop of brown hair, Mike had only been on New Appalachia for 6 months. "The chamber was locked from the outside," Jessica replied. "And even if they got out somehow, where would they go? The tracking chip should still work anywhere within 50 miles of the colony." Doug walked to the window, looking out at the strange landscape. The terraforming had created a patchwork of Earth-like green fields surrounded by the native purple vegetation. In the distance, the mountains rose up, their peaks often hidden in clouds. "Could they have gone beyond the tracking range?" Mike suggested. Doug shook his head. "They're too young. Adult dragons might make that journey, but these juveniles were only 8 months old. They couldn't fly that far." The door to the lab slid open, and Governor Lisa Taylor walked in. Her presence immediately straightened everyone's posture. At 60, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, she commanded respect without effort. "Dr. Miller," she said, nodding to Doug, "I understand we still have no leads on our missing dragons." "I'm afraid not, Governor. We've checked every possible explanation. It's as if they simply disappeared." Governor Taylor frowned. "This is becoming more than a scientific concern, Doug. The council met this morning. The farmers are wondering about their crops, and there's another issue. The dragons have become something of a symbol for our colony. The children are asking questions we can't answer." "I understand," Doug said. "We're doing everything we can." I've authorized additional resources. You'll have access to the colony's drone fleet for wider searches, and I've reassigned 3 security officers to help with ground searches." "Thank you, Governor," Jessica said. "That will help a lot." After the governor left, the team gathered around the central table to plan their expanded search. Doug couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something obvious. "Let's think about this differently," he said finally. "We've been assuming the dragons were taken or escaped, but what if they left on purpose? What if this is some kind of behavior we haven't seen before?" Jessica looked up from her tablet. "Like what? Some kind of migration?" "Maybe," Doug said. "We've only been studying them for 5 years. There could be life cycle stages we don't know about yet." Mike pulled up the dragon's biological data on the main screen. Their body temperature had been rising slightly in the week before they disappeared. "We thought it was just normal growth, but what if it was something else?" Doug felt a spark of excitement. "Check the atmospheric data for that week. Was there anything unusual? Solar flares, magnetic field fluctuations, anything?" Jessica's fingers flew on her tablet. "There was a minor geomagnetic storm 3 days before they disappeared, nothing serious enough to trigger any alarms." "That could be it," Doug said, his mind racing. "Dragons have highly sensitive electromagnetic receptors. We thought they used them for hunting, but what if they serve another purpose?" The team worked through lunch, pulling up all the data they could find on dragon physiology and behavior. By mid-afternoon, they had a new theory. The dragons might be entering some kind of developmental hibernation triggered by electromagnetic changes. "If that's true," Jessica said, "they would seek out a place with specific conditions, somewhere warm, protected, and possibly with a particular electromagnetic signature." Doug nodded. "We need to map every location in the colony with unusual electromagnetic fields, power generators, communication arrays, geothermal taps, anything that might attract them." As the sun began to set, the team had compiled a list of 37 locations to check. They would begin at first light. That evening, Doug sat on the porch of his small house at the edge of the colony. The strange purple plants of this world glowed softly in the twilight, a beautiful sight he never tired of seeing. Somewhere out there, 12 young dragons were hidden away. He just had to figure out where and why. His comm unit beeped, pulling him from his thoughts. The message was from Jessica. "Meeting at 0600, bringing coffee and donuts." Doug sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Tomorrow would be a long day of searching, but for the first time in weeks, he felt hopeful. The dragons were out there somewhere, and he was going to find them. As night fell completely, the stars came out. Different constellations than Earth's, but no less beautiful. Doug looked up at them and wondered if the dragons were looking at the same stars right now. What secrets were these creatures keeping? What new wonders would they reveal about this strange new world that humans now call home? With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Doug went inside to get some rest. Tomorrow might bring answers, and he needed to be ready.
Tyler Brooks woke before his alarm. The first hints of dawn crept through his bedroom window as he pulled on his work clothes and boots. 5 years on New Appalachia had turned the former accountant into a creature of habit. Up at 5:30 a.m., coffee by 5:45, and out to the barn by 6 to start the morning chores. His farmhouse sat on 20 acres at the edge of the colony, where the carefully terraformed land met the native purple landscape. Tyler had never planned to be a farmer. Back on Earth, he'd spent his days in an office, staring at numbers on screens. But when the colony needed food producers more than financial experts, he'd made the switch. Now he couldn't imagine going back to his old life. "Another day in paradise," he muttered to himself as he poured coffee into his thermos. Through the kitchen window, he could see his fields stretching out toward the distant mountains. The corn was growing well this season, tall green stalks swaying gently in the morning breeze. Tyler pulled on his jacket and stepped outside. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the strange, sweet smell of the native purple plants that grew beyond his property line. His boots crunched on the gravel path that led from the house to the large barn where he kept his small herd of cattle. The barn was a prefabricated structure, shipped from Earth in pieces and assembled on site when Tyler first claimed his land. It wasn't pretty, just a big metal building with sliding doors, but it did its job, keeping his 12 cows comfortable and housing his farming equipment. As Tyler approached, he noticed something odd. The cows were making more noise than usual. He could hear them moving around inside, their hooves scraping against the concrete floor. Normally, they were calm in the morning, waiting patiently for him to arrive with fresh feed. "What's got you all worked up?" Tyler asked as he slid open the barn door. Inside the barn was dimly lit by a few solar-powered lights that stayed on all night. He reached for the main switch to bring up the full lighting. As the bright LEDs flickered to life, he saw what was bothering his cattle. All 12 cows were huddled at one end of the barn, as far possible from the hayloft at the opposite end. "Hey, now what's wrong?" Tyler moved toward the cattle, checking them for signs of injury or illness. They seemed healthy, but nervous, their eyes fixed on the hayloft above. Tyler frowned. Something had spooked his normally calm herd. He walked to the ladder that led up to the hayloft, grabbing his plasma torch from the tool bench as he passed. The torch wasn't just for heat. Its bright beam made it a good flashlight in a pinch. The wooden ladder creaked under his weight as he climbed. The hayloft was stacked with bales of hay, harvested from his own fields and stored for winter feeding. As his head cleared the opening, he swept the beam of his torch around the space. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the neat stacks of hay bales he had arranged himself. Then, as the light passed over the far corner, he caught a flash of something shiny, something that reflected the light with an unusual blue-green shimmer. "What in the world?" Tyler whispered, moving carefully between the hay bales. In the far corner of the hayloft, the hay had been rearranged. Bales had been pushed and pulled to form a perfect circle, like a nest. And inside that circle, curled up together in a tight group, were 12 small creatures. Their scales glittered in the beam of his torch, shimmering with colors that seemed to shift as he moved the light. Dragons! Baby dragons! The missing ones that everyone in the colony had been searching for. Tyler stood frozen, afraid to move closer and disturb them. Each dragon was about the size of a kitten, with delicate wings folded against its body and a long tail curled around itself. They were sleeping deeply, their small chests rising and falling in perfect unison. Slowly, Tyler backed away from the nest. When he reached the ladder, he carefully climbed down and pulled out his comm unit. "This is Tyler Brooks. I need to speak with Dr. Miller at the research center. It's urgent." There was a brief pause before a sleepy voice answered. "This is Doug Miller. Do you know what time it is, Mr. Brooks?" "I found them," Tyler said simply. "The missing dragons. They're in my barn." The silence on the other end lasted so long that Tyler thought the connection might have dropped. Then Doug's voice came back, suddenly wide awake. "Don't touch them. Don't disturb them. We'll be there in 20 minutes." True to his word, Doug arrived in exactly 20 minutes, along with Jessica Winters and a woman Tyler didn't recognize. They pulled up in an electric colony vehicle, its tires crunching on the gravel as it came to a stop outside the barn. "This is Tyler Brooks," Doug asked as he jumped out of the vehicle. He was older than Tyler had expected, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years squinting into microscopes. "That's me," Tyler confirmed. "They're still up there, sleeping, haven't moved since I found them." "This is Jessica Winters, my assistant," Doug said, nodding to the blonde woman who was already pulling equipment from the back of the vehicle. "And Dr. Amanda Porter, our veterinarian." Amanda nodded to Tyler. "I'm here to check their health once Dr. Miller has assessed the situation." Tyler led them into the barn. The cows were calmer now, but still keeping their distance from the hayloft. Doug looked around, taking in every detail. "How long have you had this barn?" he asked.
Since I started farming about 5 years ago, standard colony issue. Doug nodded. And what's beneath this section? Any power sources, heating systems? Just the geothermal tap for the barn's heating system keeps the place warm enough for the cattle in winter. Doug and Jessica exchanged a look. That might explain it, Jessica said. The electromagnetic field from the tap could be what attracted them. The four of them climbed the ladder to the hayloft, moving slowly and quietly. Doug went first, carrying a handheld scanner. When they reached the nest, he knelt and began taking readings, the scanner making soft beeping sounds as it collected data. "Remarkable," he whispered. "They've created a perfect thermal environment. The hay insulates, but look at this reading. They're maintaining a steady 103.5 degrees Fahrenheit in this circle." Amanda leaned in with her own medical scanner. "Vital signs are stable. They appear to be in some kind of deep sleep state, almost like hibernation." "But why here? Why my barn?" Tyler asked. Doug's scanner beeped again and his eyes widened. The geothermal tap. It's not just providing heat, it's generating a specific electromagnetic frequency, one that matches exactly what we recorded during that geomagnetic storm 3 weeks ago. Jessica moved closer to the sleeping dragons. "They're all breathing in sync. Look at the pattern. It's perfectly matched across all 12 of them." "I've never seen anything like this," Doug said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're not just sleeping, they're linked somehow, connected." Tyler looked down at the small creatures. In the light of day, he could see how beautiful they were. Their scales weren't just blue-green, but contained hints of gold and purple that shifted as the light changed. Their wings, though folded now, had delicate membrane structures visible through the thin skin. "What happens now?" he asked. Doug looked up at him, excitement clear in his eyes. "Now, Mr. Brooks, your barn becomes the most important scientific site on New Appalachia. If you'll allow it, we need to set up monitoring equipment. We need to understand what's happening here." Tyler nodded slowly. "On one condition." "What's that?" Doug asked. "I want you to explain everything you learn. These dragons chose my barn for a reason. I want to understand why." Doug smiled and extended his hand. "Deal. Welcome to the research team, Farmer Brooks."
By noon, Tyler's quiet barn had turned into a busy research station. Doug and his team had set up cameras, sensors, and monitoring equipment all around the hayloft. They worked carefully, making sure not to disturb the sleeping dragons. "These readings are amazing," Jessica said as she checked the data on her tablet. She sat cross-legged on the wooden floor of the hayloft, just outside the circle of hay where the dragons slept. "Their brainwave patterns are synchronized. It's like they're sharing the same dream." Doug nodded, adjusting one of the sensors. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if they've formed some kind of neural network between themselves." Tyler watched from the ladder, feeling both proud and protective. These strange creatures had chosen his barn, and he felt responsible for them now. "Will all this equipment bother them?" he asked. "I don't think so. They seem to be in a very deep sleep state, but we're being careful to keep everything at a distance and to use passive sensors where possible." Amanda Porter, the veterinarian, climbed up to join them, carrying a small case of equipment. "I'd like to get some basic health readings if that's okay. Nothing invasive, just temperature, heart rate, and respiratory function." Doug nodded. "Go ahead, but one at a time, and let's start with the one on the outer edge of the group." Amanda moved slowly toward the sleeping dragons. She knelt beside the smallest one, a dragon with slightly darker scales than the others. With gentle hands, she held a scanner just above its body, careful not to touch it. "Temperature is 103.5 degrees, exactly matching the ambient temperature they've created in their nest," she reported. "Heart rate is slow but steady. Respiratory function normal for deep sleep." She moved the scanner up to the dragon's head. "Brain activity is unusual, very high for a sleeping creature." "Check another one," Doug suggested. "Let's see if they're all the same." Amanda moved to a second dragon, this one slightly larger with brighter scales. After scanning, she looked up with surprise. Identical readings, down to the decimal point. "That's not possible," Jessica said, moving closer. "Even in the same species, there should be some variation." "Not if they're linked," Doug said, excitement in his voice. "Not if they're functioning as a single organism with multiple bodies." Tyler stepped off the ladder and joined them in the hayloft. "You mean like a hive mind? Like bees or ants?" "Not exactly," Doug said, running a hand through his gray hair. "Hive insects still have individual functions and responses. This is more like a shared consciousness. They're still individuals, but they're experiencing something together." A beeping sound came from one of the sensors. Jessica hurried over to check it. "Energy readings are changing. There's a pulse pattern now in the electromagnetic field." Doug moved to look at the readings. "It's coming from the dragons themselves. They're not just responding to the field from the geothermal tap, they're generating their own field now." "Is that normal?" Tyler asked. "We don't know what normal is for dragons in this state. We've never observed this behavior before." As they watched, the 12 sleeping dragons shifted slightly, all moving at exactly the same time in exactly the same way. It was as if they were controlled by a single mind. "I need to report this to Governor Taylor," Doug said, pulling out his comm unit. "She needs to see this for herself." While Doug made his call, Tyler moved closer to the dragon nest. He sat down near the edge, just watching them sleep. There was something peaceful about the way they laid together, their small bodies rising and falling with each breath. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Jessica said, sitting down beside him. Tyler nodded. "I never paid much attention to them before. I mean, I knew they helped keep the fields clear of pests, but I never really looked at them close up." "Most people don't," Jessica said. "They see them flying around the colony and think of them as just another part of the landscape. But they're remarkable creatures, highly intelligent, with complex social structures. And now this," she gestured to the sleeping dragons. "This suggests they're even more advanced than we thought." Governor Taylor arrived an hour later, accompanied by 2 members of the Colony Council. Doug led them up to the hayloft and explained what they had discovered so far. "So they're in some kind of hibernation state?" the governor asked, looking at the sleeping dragons with interest. "More than hibernation," Doug explained. "We think they're going through a developmental phase, something that requires them to link their minds together." "Like a shared dream?" one of the council members asked. "Possibly," Doug said. "Or maybe they're sharing memories or even genetic information. We just don't know yet." "Mr. Brooks," the governor said, turning to Tyler, "this puts a significant burden on you, having a research team in your barn, monitoring equipment everywhere. Are you comfortable with this arrangement?" Tyler straightened his shoulders. "These dragons chose my barn, ma'am, and I feel responsible for them now. The team can stay as long as needed." The governor smiled. "Thank you. The colony appreciates your cooperation." She turned back to Doug. "Keep me updated on any changes. This could be a significant discovery about dragon biology." After the governor and council members left, the research team settled in for what might be a long wait. They set up a rotation schedule so someone would be monitoring the dragons at all times. Tyler insisted on being part of the rotation. "I want to help," he told Doug. "This is happening in my barn after all." Doug agreed, and Tyler was assigned the evening shift from 6 p.m. to midnight. Jessica would take over from midnight to 6 a.m., and Doug would cover the morning shift. That evening, after feeding his cattle and finishing his farm chores, Tyler climbed up to the hayloft for his first official shift as a dragon watcher. Jessica had shown him how to check the monitoring equipment and what readings to look for. He sat on a folding chair they had brought in, a thermos of coffee at his side, and a tablet showing the dragon's vital signs in his lap. The barn was quiet, except for the occasional soft move from the cows below and the steady breathing of the sleeping dragons. As the hours passed, Tyler found himself talking softly to the dragons, telling them about his day, about his farm, about his life before coming to New Appalachia. He knew they couldn't hear him, but it felt right somehow. "I used to be an accountant, spent all day in an office staring at numbers. Never thought I'd end up a farmer on another world. But here I am, and honestly, I love it. There's something real about growing things, about taking care of animals." He checked the readings on the tablet. Everything was stable, unchanged since the afternoon. "I wonder what you're dreaming about," he continued. "Are you sharing memories, learning from each other, or are you becoming something new together?" As if in response, the smallest dragon, the one Amanda had scanned first, twitched slightly in its sleep. Tyler leaned forward, watching carefully. The dragon's eyelids fluttered, though they remained closed. "Doug," he called down the ladder, "I think something's happening." Doug had stayed late, working at a makeshift desk they had set up near the barn entrance. He hurried up the ladder, Jessica close behind. "What did you see?" Doug asked, moving to check the monitors. "The small one moved, and its eyes were fluttering like it was dreaming." Doug looked at the readings. "Brain activity is increasing across all of them. The electromagnetic field they're generating is getting stronger, too." "Are they waking up?" Tyler asked. "I don't think so," Jessica said, studying the data. "It looks more like they're entering a new phase of whatever this is." As they watched, all 12 dragons began to glow softly, their scales emitting a faint blue-green light that illuminated the hayloft with an eerie, beautiful glow. "Now that," Doug said quietly, "is something I've never seen before."
For 3 days, the dragons continued to glow. The soft blue-green light pulsed gently, growing stronger at night and dimmer during the day. The research team took turns watching them, recording every change, no matter how small. Tyler had grown used to the constant activity in his barn. Scientists came and went, bringing new equipment and taking samples of the hay, the air, and even the dust around the dragon nest. His daily farm work continued, but now with an audience of curious researchers who asked endless questions about his barn, his farm, and his life on New Appalachia. On the morning of the 4th day, Tyler was alone in the hayloft. It was just after sunrise, and he had climbed up to check on the dragons before starting his morning chores. Doug and Jessica would arrive in an hour to begin the day shift. Tyler sat on his folding chair, sipping coffee from his thermos and watching the sleeping dragons. Their glow had faded with the dawn, as it did each morning. The monitoring equipment hummed softly in the background. Then he noticed something different. A slight tremor ran through all 12 dragons at the same time. Their wings twitched and their breathing pattern changed. Tyler set down his coffee and moved closer. "Hey there," he said softly. "Are you waking up?" Another tremor passed through the dragons. This time, their tails uncurled slightly and their claws flexed against the hay. Tyler reached for his comm unit. "Doug, it's Tyler. I think they're waking up. You might want to get over here." "On my way," Doug replied, his voice excited even through the small speaker. "Don't get too close to them. We don't know how they'll react when they wake." Tyler put the comm unit down and watched the dragons. Their movements were becoming more pronounced. Small heads lifted, then lowered again. Wings stretched, then folded back. It reminded Tyler of how his cat back on Earth used to wake up from a deep sleep, slowly with lots of stretching. By the time Doug and Jessica arrived, running into the barn and up the ladder, the dragons were definitely waking up. Their eyes were still closed, but they were moving more, shifting positions in their nest of hay. "This is incredible," Doug said, checking the monitors. "Their brain activity is off the charts. And look at this. They're still in sync with each other. Every movement happens across all 12 at exactly the same time." Jessica set up a camera to record the awakening. "The electromagnetic field they're generating is changing. It's becoming more complex, with multiple layers of frequency." As they watched, the smallest dragon opened its eyes. They glowed with the same blue-green light that had been coming from the dragon's scales, but brighter, more intense. One by one, the other dragons opened their eyes too, until all 12 pairs of glowing eyes were looking around the hayloft. "Don't make any sudden moves," Doug whispered. "Let them adjust to being awake." The dragons seemed to notice the humans for the first time. Their heads turned in unison, all 12 looking directly at Tyler, who was closest to their nest. "Hi there," Tyler said softly. "Welcome back." The smallest dragon tilted its head.
studying Tyler with glowing eyes. Then, something extraordinary happened. Tyler felt a gentle pressure in his mind, like a soft touch against his thoughts. Images began to appear in his head, stars wheeling across a night sky, mountains he had never seen, fields of strange plants that weren't from Earth or New Appalachia. "Whoa!" Tyler gasped, putting a hand to his head. They're showing me things in my mind." Doug moved forward slowly. "What do you mean? What are you seeing?" "Pictures, like memories, but not mine." Tyler closed his eyes, trying to focus on the images. "I see stars, planets, migration patterns, I think, and older dragons, much bigger than these ones." Jessica checked her instruments. The electromagnetic field just spiked. It's focused directly on Tyler. "They're communicating," Doug said. His voice filled with wonder. "Telepathically." The hibernation phase wasn't just about development, it was about accessing their species' collective memory. The images in Tyler's mind shifted, showing him the colony from above as if seen through the eyes of a flying dragon. He saw his own farm, his fields, his barn. Then the images zoomed in, showing the geothermal tap beneath the barn, glowing with energy that wasn't visible to human eyes. "They came here on purpose," Tyler said, opening his eyes to look at Doug. "They were drawn to the energy from the geothermal tap. They needed it to complete this change." The smallest dragon stood up on its hind legs, stretching its wings fully for the first time since they had found it. The other dragons followed, all standing and stretching in perfect unison. Their scales shimmered in the morning light, more vibrant and colorful than before. Governor Taylor arrived with several council members to witness the awakening. They stood in awe as Doug explained what they had discovered. "They've developed telepathic abilities. They can project images directly into our minds, and they can access our memories too, with permission." "Is it safe?" the governor asked, watching as one dragon perched on Jessica's shoulder, its tail wrapped gently around her neck for balance. "They seem friendly," Doug said, "and they clearly want to communicate with us. This could be the beginning of a true interspecies relationship, not just coexistence, but actual communication." By evening, word had spread throughout the colony. People gathered outside Tyler's barn hoping for a glimpse of the awakened dragons. Doug had to set up a security perimeter to keep the curious at a safe distance. Inside the barn, Tyler sat in the hayloft with the dragons. They had chosen to stay, even though they were now free to leave. The smallest one, which Tyler had started calling Scout, sat on his knee, projecting images into Tyler's mind. "They want to teach us," Tyler told Doug when he climbed up to check on them. "They're showing me their history, their knowledge. It's like they've decided I'm their translator or something." Doug nodded, watching as the other dragons arranged themselves around the hayloft, some perched on the equipment, others nestled in the hay. "What happens now?" Tyler asked. "Now?" Doug said with a smile. "We learn from them, and they learn from us. Governor Taylor is already talking about establishing a formal communication protocol. She wants to set up a dedicated facility for dragon-human interaction." Tyler looked down at Scout, which was watching him with intelligent, glowing eyes. "I think they're fine right here for now. They chose this place for a reason." That night, after everyone else had gone, Tyler stayed in the hayloft with the dragons. They had created a new nest, smaller than before but still made of hay arranged in a perfect circle. All 12 dragons curled up together, their scales glowing softly in the darkness. Scout remained awake, sitting beside Tyler as he leaned against a hay bale. The small dragon projected gentle images into Tyler's mind. Peaceful scenes of dragons and humans working together, living together in harmony. "I see it," Tyler said softly. "That's what you want, isn't it? A true partnership." The dragon blinked its glowing eyes, and Tyler felt a warm sensation in his mind. Not an image this time, but a feeling. Acceptance. Agreement. Hope. Tyler smiled and looked out the small window of the hayloft at the night sky of New Appalachia. The stars here were different from Earth's, but just as beautiful. Somewhere out there, other worlds waited to be discovered, other creatures to be met. But right here, in a simple barn on a terraformed moon, something remarkable had already happened. Two species from different worlds had found a way to connect, to communicate, to understand each other. "We're going to be okay," Tyler whispered to Scout. The dragon made a soft chirping sound and settled more comfortably against Tyler's side. Outside, the colony slept, unaware that tomorrow would mark the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one written together with the dragons of New Appalachia.